How to cut your grading in half. Grading can easily take over your evenings and weekends. You finish teaching for the day and you have 30 assignments waiting for you. And even if you spend only 5 minutes on each one, that's 2.5 hours of grading. And if you're grading essays or longer assignments, it can take much longer. So today, I'm going to share some practical ways to cut your grading time in half while still giving students useful, meaningful feedback. And I'll also show you some examples using CodeGrader, the sponsor of today's video, to show you how AI can make this process even faster. Let's get started. Start with a clear rubric. The first way to grade faster is to know exactly what you're looking for before you start grading. Without a clear rubric, we often make dozens of little decisions while reading each student's work. Is this introduction good enough? How important is this grammar mistake? Should this be an 8 or a 9? Then we repeat those decisions for every student. A good rubric removes a lot of that uncertainty. For example, if students are writing an argumentative essay, you might grade them on argument, evidence, organization, language, conclusion, and clearly define what excellent, satisfactory, and developing work looks like. This also makes AI-assisted grading much more effective. In CodeGrader, you can use your own rubric, choose from existing rubrics, or create one for the assignment. So rather than asking AI to simply decide whether an essay is good or bad, you're giving it the same criteria you would use yourself. Another useful feature is that CodeGrader can align grading with state standards and standardized assessment rubrics, including STAR, SBAC, and FAST, as well as AP rubrics such as those used for AP English Language. So if you're preparing students for one of these assessments, you can give them feedback based on the standards and rubrics they're actually expected to meet. The clearer your rubric is, the faster and more consistent your grading becomes. Grade in batches. My second tip is to stop grading assignments one by one from the beginning to end. Instead, batch your grading. If you have 30 essays, work through the same assignment while the expectations and rubric are fresh in your mind. This reduces the amount of mental switching you have to do, and technology can make batching even faster. For example, CodeGrader can work with the platforms many teachers are already using. If you use Google Classroom, you can integrate your classroom with CodeGrader instead of manually moving assignments around. CodeGrader also supports other learning management systems and assessment platforms including Canvas, Schoology, and DMAC. And there's even a Chrome extension for Canvas and Schoology, making it easier to use CodeGrader with your existing workflow. The important thing here is that you don't want to create more work for yourself by constantly downloading, uploading, copying, and moving student assignments between different platforms. When you're dealing with 30, 60, or even 100 students, removing those repetitive steps can save a surprising amount of time. Don't write every piece of feedback from scratch. This is probably one of the biggest time wasters, writing feedback. You can read an essay and type, "Your argument is clear, but you need stronger evidence to support your second point." Then you open the next essay and you type another paragraph, then another and another. Instead, let AI create a first draft of the feedback. CodeGrader can analyze the student's work according to the assignment and rubric and generate feedback for that particular student. Now, my job changes. Instead of read, analyze, decide, write everything, I can review, edit, and approve. That's a much faster workflow. And importantly, you can still change the feedback. If there's something important I know about the student, I can add it. The AI gives me a starting point, but I'm still the teacher making the final decision. Use glow and grow feedback. Here's another way to make feedback faster and more useful. Don't give students 10 different things to fix. Give them something they did well and something important they can improve. You can call this glow and grow. The glow identifies something the student did successfully. The grow gives them a clear area for improvement. For example, Your introduction clearly establishes your position and gives the reader a good understanding of your argument. Grow. Try adding more specific evidence to support your second argument. This is much more manageable for the student than receiving a wall of corrections. CoGrader can generate this kind of targeted feedback for students. So instead of spending several minutes trying to think of the perfect comment for every student, you already have personalized feedback that you can review and adjust. And I really like this approach because more feedback isn't always better feedback. Students need to know, what am I doing well and what should I work on next? Focus on patterns, not every mistake. This is especially important for language teachers. Imagine a student writes an essay with 25 grammar mistakes. Do you really need to correct all 25? Probably not. Not only does that take you a huge amount of time, but the student may look at a page covered in corrections and completely ignore them. Instead, look for patterns. Maybe the student repeatedly has problems with subject-verb agreement, verb tense, articles, sentence structure, or punctuation. Pick one or two important areas and make those the focus. For example, pay attention to past tense verbs. Several sentences describe past events but use the present tense. Find 3 examples and try correcting them. Now the feedback becomes a learning activity instead of simply giving the student all the answers. This is another place where CoGrader helps. The generated feedback can help identify important strengths and areas for improvement, and then you decide what feedback is actually worth giving the student. That saves time while keeping the feedback focused. Make feedback actionable. Here's another simple rule. Don't just tell students what's wrong. Tell them what to do next. Compare these 2 comments. Your evidence is weak versus add one specific example or source to support your second argument. The second comment is much more useful. Or instead of your organization needs improvement, try add a topic sentence at the beginning of each body paragraph so the reader knows what the paragraph will explain. That's actionable feedback. When I'm reviewing AI-generated feedback in CoGrader, this is something I can look for. Is the feedback specific? Is it connected to the student's actual work? And most importantly, does the student know what to do next? If yes, I don't need to write another paragraph explaining the same thing. Stop repeating the same comment. If you've been teaching for a while, you've probably written the same feedback hundreds of times. Check your capitalization. You need more supporting evidence. Your thesis statement needs to be clearer. Use transition words between your ideas. Traditionally, one solution is to create a comment bank. That's still a great idea. Save your most common comments and reuse them when appropriate. But AI gives us another option. Instead of simply copying and pasting exactly the same generic comment, AI can generate feedback based on the individual student's work. For example, 2 students might both score lower in supporting evidence, but they might need completely different advice. One student might not have enough evidence. Another student might have plenty of evidence but doesn't explain how it supports their argument. So we get the speed advantage of reusable feedback without necessarily giving every student exactly the same generic comment. Use AI to check for consistency. Here's a grading problem that doesn't get talked about enough. You might grade the first essay at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and grade the 30th essay at 10 o'clock at night. Are you grading them exactly the same way? Probably not. As we get tired, our standards unintentionally change. We might become stricter or more generous, or simply overlook things. Using the same rubric and grading criteria across all student submissions can help make the process more consistent. CoGrader evaluates submissions according to the same rubric criteria, which gives you a consistent starting point. Again, you should review the results. But instead of trying to remember exactly how you graded a similar essay 2 hours ago, you have the same framework being applied across the class. Spend more time on the student who needs it. This is one of my favorite grading strategies. Don't spend exactly the same amount of time on every assignment. Some student work is very straightforward. You read it, it meets the requirements, the feedback makes sense. Other assignments need more attention. Maybe the student's ideas are unclear, maybe the suggested grade doesn't feel right. Maybe there's something unusual about the submission. That's where you should spend your time. If CoGrader has already analyzed the submission, applied the rubric, and generated feedback, I can quickly review straightforward assignments. Then I can spend more of my actual grading time on the students who genuinely need my attention. That's a much better use of a teacher's time than spending 5 minutes manually typing comments on every single assignment. Remember, AI is your assistant. Finally, I think this is the most important point when using AI for grading. Don't think of AI as replacing the teacher. Think of it as your teaching assistant. Imagine having an assistant who could read your students' assignments, compare them with your rubric, suggest scores, identify strengths and weaknesses, and draft personalized feedback. Then they give everything to you for the final review. You'd still make the final decision, but you'd save an enormous amount of repetitive work. That's how I would approach something like CoGrader. Review the grade, read the feedback, make changes when necessary, and use your professional judgment. AI does the repetitive work. You remain the teacher. So, if you want to cut your grading time in half, try these strategies. Use a clear rubric, grade assignments in batches, stop writing every comment from scratch, use glow and grow feedback, focus on patterns instead of correcting every mistake, make your feedback actionable, use AI to improve consistency, and spend your valuable time on the students and assignments that actually need your attention. Tools like CoGrader can make many of these strategies much easier because you're not starting the grading process from zero. You already have an analysis, rubric-based assessment, and personalized feedback you can review and adjust. And that can turn grading from read, analyze, grade, write, and repeat into review, adjust, approve. And when you have dozens or even hundreds of assignments to grade, that can save you a huge amount of time. If you'd like to try CoGrader for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description below. And let me know in the comments, how many hours do you normally spend grading every week? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.